If we live unaware or in denial of our false self pattern, it's only a matter of time before it will find a way to sabotage some important area of our life.
Welcome to the Live True podcast. I'm David Lovelace.
And I'm Corone Lovelace, and this is the podcast dedicated to true spiritual living.
Join us for a candid conversation around personal spiritual secrets that can revolutionize the way you see yourself, the way you love and relate to others, and enable you to do your work with even more fruitfulness and fulfillment. We're sharing some of our own successes and failures, as well as interviews and insights from some of the best spiritual leaders, psychologists, and wisdom teachers. We're here to help you live, love, and lead from the source of your true identity.
Today we'll be talking about 3 beliefs that are sabotaging every one of our lives.
Yeah, but before we get to that, let's talk about what we've been up to here the last week since our last podcast. We've been starting work on a brand new ebook as well as audio program. So on one hand, we're doing writing every week now, and we're doing these podcasts and producing these along with the counseling and coaching we're doing with individuals and couples and leaders. And then we decided to add something else on top of it this month. And we're pretty excited about all this.
Yeah, I think we're going to roll it out here, hopefully by the month of December. I think that's our goal.
Yep.
Shooting for that.
I thought it was November.
Did I say that?
December.
Was I pushing it out farther than it needed to be?
I think you were.
Okay. That was a Freudian slip.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, it's crazy, but we're having fun doing this because we're passionate about all this jazz.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about some of the details later, and maybe even ask you guys to help us come up with a title.
Yeah.
For what we're working on.
Yeah, maybe we should have a contest.
Of some kind.
And whoever comes up with the best title for the audio program or book, well, like maybe give them a trip around the world or something.
Or maybe just a free audio book and an ebook.
Okay, that sounds like that fits more inside the budget.
This is kind of the way we're making our living right now. I don't think
right.
we have enough in the kitty to be able to send anybody down to the drugstore, much less around the world.
Yeah, that's the only kitty we have
That's
around
the
here.
only kitty, yeah.
Oh, let's see here. What else has been going on? I got to recently on part of a day off, I got to do some kayaking, some paddling. Hadn't done that in several weeks, so it was great being out there. And then I showed you, I don't know if you remember, I came home and showed you thereafter about 2 kayakers. I think they were paddling up in Alaska or
You are
off the
always
Northwest Coast.
showing me pictures of kayakers up in Alaska with things jumping over the kayaks or something that's actually photoshopped and you think it's real.
Oh, there's no way that was Photoshop. This whale comes up out of the water 20 feet.
It was totally photoshopped.
It was on video. You can't Photoshop
Yes, you
video.
can.
Can you really?
Of course. What do you think?
Do you think that was Free Willy that was coming up out of the water?
I don't know, but everybody said it was photoshopped.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
it wasn't.
Anyway, so your picture.
Well, when it happens to you one day, you'll go, this was not Photoshopped.
I may not live to tell if it happens, actually.
Well, if you keep paddling with me, we're going to run into some adventure out there.
Okay, so you were going to say you saw a picture of something in Alaska.
I'll forget about it now.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, I know.
I already told him. I said the whale comes up out of the water.
No, I thought you were going to talk about the bear.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was another deal that happened. So this lady's out paddling and camping by herself for several days out in the Alaskan wilderness.
Okay, wait a minute.
So,
let's start again.
Okay.
Was she by herself? Because how do we have this on video if she was by herself?
Okay.
Did she set up the camera on land and then...
You know what? I don't pay attention to details.
All right.
I don't know.
This is how
all we know is this was on film the other day.
I am always so skeptical of these people that are out by themselves, and amazingly they have a video.
I know. Well, listen, why am I going on with this story if you're going to tell me this was Photoshopped? I mean, for crying out loud.
Go ahead, tell a story. I'll be quiet.
So this grizzly starts to attack her.
It's already not true. You can tell. grizzly.
Oh,
Nobody's going to
forget about
survive
it.
a grizzly attack.
He left her alone. He ended up eating half of her kayak, but
She didn't
anyway,
get back to land.
we better move on. We're losing it here quickly. So for the four of you that are still tuned in to this particular podcast, after all that monkey motion, listen. If you missed last week's episode, we talked in depth about the arrogance of capacity. And boy, if you missed that, you can find that in iTunes or elsewhere on our website. We actually have a brand new podcast page that archives all of these podcasts, so you can check it out there.
All of our, how many? 3?
All of our 3. Can you imagine the day that we'll have 50?
No.
Gosh, that would be a year from now, unless we go to twice a week, which we ain't going to do.
No, we ain't.
We also want to mention this podcast is brought to you by youlivetrue.com. That's youlivetrue.com. It's an online site that's dedicated to help you live, love, and lead from the source of your true identity. You can find out more at youlivetrue.com. My love.
Okay, so which of these 3 statements sounds most like something you often feel or believe? I do not have enough. I have not done enough. Or I am not enough. At any given time, we all experience each of these 3 statements, sometime or another. But one of them will ring most true to us most of the time. One of those statements, I am not enough, I don't have enough, or I have not done enough, forms a core belief system that we subconsciously live from just about every waking minute of every day. It's like our filtering system for everything that happens to us. We are rarely conscious of the way that we process our experiences and perceive information, but our subconscious internal motivation is always active and on duty, and on the lookout for ways to be affirmed and confirmed. Some call the way we perceive life like that is our false self pattern, or what the Bible refers to as our old nature. Those are like distortions, lenses that we see life through, that we see God through, that we see ourselves through, that we see other people through. And it's a limited view. It's stunted. It's only one way of seeing, and it's kind of handicapped. And it's not taking in objectively all the factors and all the truth that it can. But it's our way. It's our way of seeing the world and our way of perceiving the world.
Yeah, isn't that amazing that the way we see things, we swear that it's got to be absolutely actually like that because that's the way we see it, or that's the way we feel it. And I think very few of us live and love and lead from the point of view that we just have a point of view, and not recognizing there's so many other ways of viewing reality. And I mean, this is what we know great wisdom teachers have always talked about in terms of we have distortions going on where I think about the Apostle Paul saying we only see in part.
Yes.
We don't see clearly.
Right.
And so I think for both of us, this has been a very significant thing of better understanding and identifying our distortions, how we've in the past distorted, not all, but distorted parts of ourselves or one another or God or other people around us.
I think we probably, most of us would say, I know I don't know everything. I think we'd all agree with that statement. I don't know everything.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I would say I don't know myself, or I don't really know what I'm perceiving or seeing something to be true or accurate about what I'm experiencing in this moment. When actually there are some ways that we are in denial in our own selves, that we are hiding from our own selves as we are looking at things and experiencing things that, we'll get into later. But it's fascinating to me that we can actually hide from ourselves things we don't want to see about ourselves and the truth.
Yeah. Well, I've always been fascinated by the fact of the predominant miracle Jesus seems to do in terms of the healing in the Gospels is the healing of people's eyesight.
Blindness.
Yeah, blindness. And we know from what he says, as well as what the other New Testament writers later say, that while he literally did those things, it actually was pointing to a bigger reality.
Yeah.
It was really a metaphor for something much bigger of concerning the blindness we have, to your point a moment ago, to our own souls, to our own lives, God and other things.
Yeah, he called the Pharisees blind guides.
Yeah.
You're trying to lead other people, but you don't even see yourselves, what's going on in yourselves.
Ooh, that's good. Yeah, that's really good. We should write those verses down in the show notes.
We should.
Yes, we should. So one of the three statements that we just mentioned a moment ago, that I'm not enough, I don't have enough, or I haven't done enough, those are things that give your ego its primal energy and determination, which at a young age is actually necessary, but as we mature, we start finding the same strategies we use to help us initially construct ourselves and cope in childhood. All of a sudden, they don't seem to work as well later on. They end up falling apart on us and are found wanting, right? So like for me, out of those three statements, it's really the I am not enough statement that is the one I really resonate with.
With you?
Yeah.
I mean, you...
Surprise.
Seriously.
Surprise. Yeah. I mean, earlier in my life, if you would have said, David, the statement that drives you a lot internally is that you don't feel like you are enough, I would have gone, you're loco.
No.
Right? I mean, your train's gone right off the rails right there.
Because you always seem very confident, and you were confident and are confident.
Yeah. And that's true. All that's true. Yet at the same time, there was something else operating inside of me that was a part of my shadow side. That, I mean, I've been told from an early age of, how good I was, how well I was going to do and succeed in the future, and just the extraordinary person that I was. But deep down inside, I never felt like I could live up to all that. I tried to live up to it, but how I actually experienced myself in my identity, I didn't really feel like that was the case.
There were parts of you that did, but then other parts of you could not really fully believe that those statements were true about you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, out of the three statements we mentioned, or these three beliefs that we all carry around with us, I mean, we all actually have all three of those operating inside of us, right? But we tend to have a home base. And so for me, it's the I'm not enough. So for me, when something bad happens, a subconscious thought registers like, see, Loveless, this just proves that you're an absolute loser.
Like, give me some examples of maybe when things like that pop up in your thinking. Because I'm, most people I think that know you would be very surprised at that. And I would certainly, when I first started hearing you talk about this and recognizing this for yourself, I was surprised that would have been the one you would choose.
Yeah.
That statement.
Gosh, there are a lot of examples I can think.
Okay.
For example, recently, we were trying to send out both a blog and a podcast, and there were a couple of errors in those things. And when you initially saw a couple of things I hadn't seen, and when you went, hey, what's up with this? Why did this turn out this way? And a couple of these buttons don't work in people's emails or blogs that we sent them. You were questioning why something was present, and you were just asking for explanation.
Yeah.
I experienced it as, see, David, once again, this proves you're a loser. You should have had those buttons figured out. You should have tested them ahead of time. And look, they didn't work. And you were trying to express something, just a function.
Yeah.
And I was experiencing as something that was flawed or defective about me, like, that should have never happened under my watch. And it isn't that I did something wrong, it's that something's wrong with me.
Okay, so is that the difference between something like shame and guilt, when you feel shame about something versus guilty over something?
Yeah, and the difference between the two, Some people may think it's just a slight shade, but actually it's a distinct difference, even though one can inform the other. So guilt says, I haven't done enough, or I've done
something wrong.
And shame says, I'm wrong. There's something wrong with me. Something's flawed. Something's defective on the inside of me.
Okay.
So that's what it is. So if we're being driven by the I am not enough theme, what it can do is it can energize us to do a lot more than everyone else. So we can prove to someone or several someones, though most of the time we're really not exactly sure who those other people are, we're supposed to be impressing or getting an approval of. Because really at the core, it's we want to hear and feel and actually experience in our core, yes, I am enough. So, I can think of many, many times over the years where I was trying to accomplish and achieve certain things in order to prove to several particular people in my life that were influential, that were important, that, because I achieved this brand new milestone, I am enough.
So it wasn't so much for you that you needed tons of people to approve of something. You were looking to a very select few that you wanted to approve of you.
Yeah, exactly. And I never felt like I had enough. I always
of
needed
that.
more
From those people.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So, for others, if they feel like I'm not enough, it might drive them to study harder than everyone else. Perhaps some of you that are listening today have experienced that before, as a student in one way or the other. Or it can, drive you to go in earlier, stay later at the office. Maybe it shows up in striving for more accolades or affirmations from your boss or from other, people that are important in your life. But all of it seems to be a subconscious attempt to really silence the incessant loud speaker in our head that keeps whispering, no way, don't try to kid yourself. You're really not okay.
Okay. Or there's couple of other questions or statements that, we can look at.
And beliefs.
And beliefs that we have. And maybe another underlying identity statement is that I don't have enough. Our false self might fuel a sudden need to go shopping, to acquire more. I don't have enough tools in my workshop. Mm-hmm. I need another screwdriver.
Yep.
Now that in our case might be true. we might not. We might need to go and get one actually, like the first one.
But the question is, if we had more drivers,
would we use them?
Would we use them? Would your husband know how to use them?
Yeah, you could figure that out. But anyway, with somebody who maybe already has a super big, workshop, they might just think, I just need one more item. I got to have one more thing to feel like I'm actually okay. Or somebody that needs to do a lot of shopping. I've never been accused of that, but I hear some people have done that before.
Yes, rumors of that.
So that, we can be told, how hot we look. Or, it could be that we don't feel like we have enough food. We don't have enough to eat. And so our issues are more in acquiring and attaining more food. And so we try to eat our way out of some kind of lesser than loser kind of mentality. Or maybe our underlying identity statement is something like, I haven't done enough. But before I get to haven't done enough, how about we talk a few more examples of I don't have enough.
Yeah.
Like, what are some more ways
I think
shows up?
we've seen that it can show itself in feeling like I don't have enough facts. I need more information. I need more If I don't get more information, then I'm not going to feel good in this relationship or in this job situation or in our walk with God. I know some people they exhaust themselves to no end, feeling like they need more facts, more information about God, and clearly having greater, ever-evolving, amounts of revelation concerning God can be very helpful. But when you're always walking around feeling like you have a fear because you don't feel like you have enough, and we've really seen that.
I don't have enough information about God, but not necessarily experiences with God.
Yeah.
Those are kind of a little bit different. Different
which
experiences.
We'll talk about in other podcasts as well.
Yeah, sometimes people don't feel like they have enough friends. Or enough security.
Real friends or virtual friends?
I think these days it doesn't really matter. To some people. Yeah. But even friends or security, I don't have enough security. Yeah. So there's a lot of extra deadbolts and security cameras all around you. Yeah. Or it could be any number of things that we're still feeling the need for. It's generally based out of fear, though, isn't it? That feeling that I don't have enough.
I don't have enough.
I'm afraid of something not quite being there.
Right. And the word, the leading word is always the word more.
More. Mm-hmm.
Whenever I either say, feel, or I act as if I just need more fun, more facts, more friends, more money, more, and then all will be well. Or a real myth behind that.
Do you think addiction comes from this, or could addiction really come from any of these?
I think addiction can come from any of these, but it seems like the studies are certain types of addictive behaviors are certainly driven by appetites. Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about the third statement.
Okay, so another statement is, I haven't done enough. Our false self might fuel a need to do what kind of things if you haven't done enough?
If I feel like I haven't done enough, then that means I need to achieve more.
Okay.
I need to accomplish more. So it may look like, someone that's, started a company and they've gotten it up to 10 employees and they think, but I still haven't done enough until this company grows to 20 employees, or we did, $300,000 in revenue last year, and something's wrong with us if we're not doing $700,000 in revenue this year. And it's not about that there's not enough revenue there. It's about they don't feel like they've achieved or they've accomplished enough. Very often we know part of this is driven by the way we compare ourselves to other people. And we use other people that are constantly shifting and changing as our point of orientation for our identity and who we are. So, for example, when it comes to this thing, I haven't done enough, I think we've seen this a lot with parents, where they, and they're not even aware of it. I shouldn't say we're not even aware of it. Right. We've done this many times ourselves, where when you don't feel like you've achieved enough or accomplished enough, then it's easy to then project that on your kids, isn't it?
Yes.
And where we tend to drive them, like if we don't have 5 bumper stickers on our car
right, for
that
honor
says
roll.
My child, has not only made the honor roll, they are the valedictorian, or whoever that is, of the class, then we feel like, maybe if I just nudge them a little more, but to pause and ask what's behind that.
Well, how does this look in church world? I haven't done enough. Have you ever seen this in church world?
Let's go on to the next subject.
Yeah, let's look at this one. Let's look at this
gosh, yeah, that's big in church world. It's one of the many things that is really never talked about. And there were many times in my leadership over the years, a part of me would seek to accomplish things because of my love for God or because of my genuine love for people, and to be able to reach a broken world. But there were other times, there were other things mixed into it where I didn't feel like, we had accomplished enough, that we were big enough, and that we, so that was definitely a motive there. I think very often church leaders wrestle with that crocodile, oftentimes without even being aware of it. Again, no one's meaning any evil intent, but again, that's a part of what this conversation's about, is identifying these underlying belief systems that act as pretty significant drivers in our life. But we can get away with it when we do it in the name of Jesus.
Exactly. So if we haven't had enough baptisms, we might say, I haven't done enough for God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we might go, well, we need more baptisms this
Right.
year, so we need to share Jesus with more people.
Right.
Do you think the motive could still be wrong, even though our hearts mean to be right, but we're pushing based on something that's coming out of our false self? It's not really something that's coming out of a true motive. Or we need to expand our facilities, or we need to actually go to 3 services instead of 1 or 2.
Go to 23 campuses.
Or how many campuses,
Yeah,
or whatever.
Yep.
It never ends, right?
It never ends.
Because the Great Commission has not been accomplished, right?
No, that's right. That's right. But again, what's behind that is, or very often what's behind that, it's not enough. You can't achieve enough or accomplish enough. So, I remember thinking, when we had 500 people, if we were ever have 500 people in our church, it would be like, oh my gosh, this is awesome.
That'd be great. Mm-hmm.
But when we had 500 people, I thought, well, this isn't enough. We should have 1,000 people here. I mean, if we were really doing things well for Jesus and pleasing him, then we would, because there are a lot of people. Now, if I live in a town of 300, then the conversation's over.
Mm-hmm. It's different. It's a different conversation.
Right. Mm-hmm. So, but we all have to contextualize these things. But in a city of 1 million people, all of a sudden one day we had 1,000 people. And I thought, well, gosh, we need to have 2,000. And I remember we had 2. It had to be 4. Then we had 4. So those kinds of things transpire within our hearts. And again, I know we're talking about ministry and church leadership in this moment, but the same thing is true in the marketplace as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And although in that case, it almost seems like you can get away with it more because everyone is expecting you to expand and to grow and to climb the ladder and to do those things in a nonprofit or more of a spiritual context. It's definitely more cloaked.
Yep.
Even though it may also be present. So there are a lot of ways, though, that our primary false self pattern could be showing up and wreaking havoc with our lives. Like a key step is simply to become aware that indeed our own false self pattern does exist. There is one. Mm-hmm. And becoming self-aware is one of the most challenging and most important practices that we can have if we really want to live in true self-wholeness. So as we do this, it's important, though, not to be overly vigilant or obsessively self-critical.
Yeah,
Some of us, myself included, it's not hard at all for me to be self-critical. So this kind of exercise could potentially really trip me up if I'm not aware that God is not judging me and not trying to trip me up here.
Yeah.
But my own judgments are not what's necessary here. It's my observation, being aware, and being judgmental is a favorite pastime of the false self, and we need to look at that a lot if that's what's happening with us.
Yeah, I think this is so key, honey, because you were reflecting on yourself there, and as you were doing that, I was thinking about myself. I was thinking about many friends that we have from a lot of different places that wrestle with this, because it's, becoming aware of things that are really sabotaging us. When the Father makes us aware of those things, it's not to condemn us.
Right.
It's not to judge us, but rather it's to bring darkness into light so that we can see the actual lie of something.
Yeah.
And we've talked before. We're going to talk a lot more about this in the future. But again, to me, it goes back to understanding that we have both in Jesus' language, we have wheat and we have weeds in our life. And what does it mean to hold both of those together compassionately rather than judging the weeds side of us? Clearly, we're supposed to be regularly addressing those issues within us. But I think one of the startling things that we've seen here in the last, 2 or 3 years of our own journey is, the more we're critical of something, the more we can tend to drive underground.
Right.
And later it can rear its head in the ugliest and most, atomic bomb kinds of ways within our lives, as opposed to when we become aware of something that is sabotaging us? What does it mean to bring it in closer rather than to deny that it exists? And we bring it in closer to examine it and to really see what it is and what's behind it.
Okay. So in another podcast, we're going to talk about some fabulous antidotes for our false self patterns that are amazing, that are so life-giving, and that have been super huge game changers for us.
Yeah. So let's talk about how to apply this. I mean, what are some rhythms and practices that can help people realign their lives around, the way of getting through and seeing these sabotaging belief systems? It seems like, one of the things that we've been practicing, in the last little bit of the season of our life is trying to stand back from ourselves like a neutral observer and investigate and be like a learner, a disciple, just be curious of what's really driving us to think, speak, or act in the ways that we do, and then determine if it's really coming from a healthy or unhealthy place. So think about this. Those of you that are listening today, to think about what does it look like to observe when your thoughts lead to actions or reactions that defeat or sabotage you, or end up leading to conflicts at home or at work or in other relationships of your life. I mean, here's the way I recently described this to some clients of ours that I was in a counseling session with. I said, because this has just kind of come to me recently in this particular paradigm I said, I want you to observe and I want you to notice the difference between compassionately observing something versus judgingly absorbing something. So to compassionately observe something, it means that I look at parts of me that are broken or not completely healthy, aren't completely right, or, sweetheart, in your case, when I look at you, and what does it mean for me to, when you are upset about something or you're frustrated with something or something's been troubling you, what does it mean for me to act as a neutral observer and hold you compassionately and compassionately observe what you're going through, rather than, this goes back to the shame thing, doesn't it? Rather than my taking it personally and my absorbing, and where I do it in such a way as I'm judging myself harshly or perhaps judging you harshly in the moment. What does it mean to compassionately observe what's going on and to be curious about it and say, sweetheart, tell me more about that. Why are you thinking that, or why are you feeling that way? What's behind that? Rather than my immediately trying to move into either problem-solving mode or my moving into that shame, fear, or guilt statement, one of those three statements.
Or reactionary in
or
some way.
reactionary in some way.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, so it's important that we get curious about what's really driving us. Because if we live unaware or in denial of our false self pattern, it's only a matter of time before it will find a way to sabotage some really important area of our life. I love Psalm 139. It says, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. And see if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting."
Oh, that's good.
And if I'm with God, I kind of view this as God and I are the observers of my heart. And I'm saying, God, come with me and search out my heart and know my heart and test my heart and know my anxious thoughts. If we look at every single one of those three statements, those three core beliefs, I'm not enough, I don't have enough, I haven't done enough, those are anxious thoughts. So God is saying, see, and the scriptures are saying, see if there's any offensive way, those anxious thoughts, and then lead me in a way that's everlasting, that's eternal, that's secure, that's permanent, and instead of those anxious thoughts.
How many times in the past have you either read this verse or you've heard this verse taught and thought, and you read it in such a way that you emotionally interpret it as God saying, look, I want you to pray that when there's something offensive in you, I want to bring it to your light. I want to bring it to your awareness, because I'm mad, I'm angry at you. This is something sinful. I'm judging you because of that, versus God's going, actually, I'm already observing this about you, mm-hmm. and I'm observing you compassionately. Mm. I mean, I'm loving you, and you haven't even changed yet. You haven't done anything about it.
Yeah.
And I want to teach you how to do that. And when we can partner together as dad and son, as dad and daughter, mm-hmm. what does it look like? And do you remember reading this differently before, or hearing it differently?
I think we have been taught, and it's been an influence, especially in a lot of our Western theology, kind of an angry God syndrome.
Yeah.
God's angry and he's mad and he wants us to get our act together.
Yeah.
And while I think everybody would say God is love on one hand, on the other hand, we definitely have lots of contradictory ways that we portray him and view him.
Like God stays upset most of the time.
God's mostly angry and trying to get everybody's act together.
I actually think most people have been taught in such a way, again, no one's meant evil by this, but God was basically grumpy throughout history until Jesus came along.
Right.
And helped.
Jesus kind of straightened God out.
He kind of helped improve God's
image.
Mood a little bit.
And his image.
That's junk right there.
Yeah.
But that's another
God's
topic.
heart has obviously always been the same toward us. Yeah. And I just love the psalm, though, that we can search our hearts.
Yeah.
That with God in the Spirit, we can search our hearts and see the ways that are causing us anxious thoughts. Where are our anxious thoughts coming from? And if they're there, Lord, lead me in the way everlasting. And in some future podcasts, we're going to talk about the way everlasting, what that actually looks like, how we can constantly be in touch with that everlasting way and experientially have a connection with that eternal Father that we have never really had in the same way. It's just been revolutionizing the way that we view God.
Yes.
And it's been amazing and what it's really doing for our own ability to see our false self patterns. So right now, I want to encourage you, as you're sitting there doing something, working, driving, whatever it is you're doing while you're listening to this podcast, ask yourself, what are the things you think or do that seem to get in the way of the truest riches, the truest qualities, and the truest values that you want in your life? What are the things you think or do that seem to get in the way of the truest riches, the truest qualities, and the truest values that you want in your life? And what could be at the bottom of this? I know for me, I was made aware some time back that one of the things that I think about that gets in the way of the truest riches and qualities and values I want in my life is comparison. Mm. And you mentioned that a little while ago, but that's really something that is a number one trip me up kind of thing that I'm regularly aware of, comparison.
Right.
Usually it's myself with someone else in some form or another. And particularly if it relates to somebody else getting some special treatment or special accolades or just being set apart in some way that I have not been. Hmm. And it challenges me at a very core level that I'm, again, back to I'm not enough.
Yep.
Something about me needs to do better and create more opportunities where I can also be special or I can be noticed or whatever. And I'm always having to work on recognizing and seeing where that particular area for me of comparison is really tripping me up and stealing my joy, because that's what comparison really does. So today we want to encourage you to start this practice of being your own non-condemning observer, using your own non-condemning inner observer. At first, you may only be able to see what's happening after the fact. That happens often when we're first learning to practice this. But over time, you'll be able to catch yourself in the act of thinking and processing in a false self way. And then you'll begin to alter the direction of your conversation and your actions that you see are coming from some of those unhealthy and healthy thoughts.
Those three unhealthy belief systems.
Those particularly core belief systems. But we'll be talking a whole lot more about that in the future because it's pretty paramount to the way that we behave, the way that our relationships work or don't work, and our fruitfulness in the world. We're very, very, very passionate about it.
Yes, we are. So if you're already aware that one of those three statements is driving you in unhealthy directions, we want you to just know that we're here to support your desire to take any look at that you want to. I mean, we want to help you discover the secrets to a healthier, more fruitful, and deeply satisfying life. And again, the very tools that we share with you every week on this podcast are coming out of our own life experiences of where it has succeeded and where it's failed and what we've learned through it all. So, by the way, we've really appreciated hearing from different ones of you just over the last couple of weeks as we've begun these podcasts. Some of you have responded to us in emails, some in voicemails. Some of you have written some comments on our website and posted them there. Here just what a couple of you have said this last week. A lady by the name of Kathy said, "I've thoroughly enjoyed your podcast. I'm looking forward to future ones. I really need your insight and guidance in my life right now. It feels so good to know I have a new tool with You Live True. Thank you guys a lot." So it's kind of cool, right? I mean, the way she was just seeing it as this is like a new tool in her arsenal of trying to live life in a healthy way. Yeah. Another person wrote and said, "This is great insight. This podcast is helping me in identifying and relinquishing areas where I've subtly, and sometimes not so subtly, tried to control my life." The statement, "If I'm in control, then I'm not letting God control my life," that you guys mentioned in your last podcast is really the truth. The truths that you're sharing in these podcasts are really gracefully and personally shared, that you've shared in that way. It's really enabling me and others of us to see. So that was really cool. And then another person I was just on the phone with earlier today, we were talking about another matter, and they brought up the podcast and said, "Oh, by the way, I listened to the podcast yesterday for the first time," and they really were sweet. They said, "It's just so good to hear your voices again."
Our voices, yeah.
Like your voices have been snuffed out or been removed or whatever, And so it's just good actually hearing you guys in person again. And we're loving this. So if you have any comments to make on this episode, or you have any questions, we would love to hear from you. You can just go to our blog at youlivetrue.com. and then go to what are called the show notes for this episode. So every time we do a podcast, we also write out some of the major, scriptures or resources or insights that we had that we just post on there. It's called the show notes. But what you can do is scroll down to the bottom of the comment section, and there you can leave a comment or question or whatever. So just a couple of quick reminders before we wrap this up. If this episode's been helpful to you, or you feel like this podcast has the potential to help others, then we'd really appreciate you recommending this to friends or family. And one of the easiest ways of doing that is, again, to go to our website, click on the show notes, and just hit the share button right there.
That website is youlivetrue.com. And our next podcast will be an interview with Pastor Francis Anfuso about being perfectly positioned.
Oh, that's going to be fun.
Do you wish God had written a different script for you? Do you see your life as an exquisite feast or burnt toast? Are you eating and enjoying every bite, or is it boring, bland, predictable? So our lives begin to be truly transformed when we stop asking God to change our circumstances and allow Him to change our perspective. Behind every challenging situation, there is a loving God whose victorious perspective is far greater than the trials we face. The breakthrough you have been longing for is just ahead.
Well, that's it for this episode of the Live True podcast. If we can serve or help you in any way, again, we offer coaching and counseling to individuals, couples, and leaders, as well as do speaking. And if we can help serve you in any of those ways, then you can go to our website and let us know. Again, if you enjoy this podcast, you can also subscribe through iTunes or through your Windows device. And by the way, we've just created a new podcast page on our website, and you can just click on that button, and it will actually show you all the archive podcasts we have, as well as subscribe through a number of different services to all that. So I think we mentioned a while ago, if you want to read a summary of this podcast, you can also read it on our show notes. So
until next time, we want to encourage you to always live, love, and lead from the source of your true identity.